What is up, Packers fans? Happy Wednesday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Thanks so much for being here. I know we're still a little bit hungover from the Packers' loss this past week, but we are on to bigger and better things. Most importantly, beating the Cowboys this weekend. We did have a couple roster moves that did take place. Wanted to go over those really quick before we get to our weekly episode with the Paul Farrington Show. Really fun episode today. Fun to dig into this one, even though it wasn't a fun result for Green Bay, being the 1 and the 3-1 for the week in the NFC North, but always great to chop it up with those guys. Those transactions, as mentioned, Brant Banks signed to the active roster from the practice squad. Don't know quite yet just what exactly that means for Aaron Banks, Zach Tom. Are they going to be out a while? These can usually mean a couple different things. A, that Brant Banks is doing really well in the practice squad and they didn't want to lose him. Could be that some other team was going to sign him to their active roster and they then sort of matched it and said, no, you can come join our active roster, stay with us instead. Or it could mean that they know they're going to need him because Zach Tom and Aaron Banks are going to have an extended absence and they're going to need him as that eighth offensive lineman. We don't know enough yet because we don't have an injury report yet. There hasn't been a practice this week yet, but as we get into Wednesday, we'll get a better feel from an injury standpoint if that's why Brant Banks was brought up or if there was a different reason for that. Remember, they had 2 open roster spots already due to Jaden Reed and Brenton Cox going on IR, so they do still have 1 spot available. Meanwhile, the Packers also signed Jacoby Keeney-James, a wide receiver, to their practice squad and let go of Mecole Hardman. Now, Hardman probably makes sense. He probably recognized, and the Packers probably recognized, if they didn't need him over these first few games with Jaden Reed out and with Christian Watson still out, they probably weren't going to need him at some point this season or just didn't have that spot for him, right? This would have, like this past week, would have been the ultimate game with Reed out. You need a punt returner potentially, and they still didn't have interest in bringing him up to the active roster. So if that wasn't going to be the week to do it, it probably just makes sense for him to see if he can go find another team somewhere where maybe he has a better chance to make it either on their active roster or as part of their practice squad as a call-up somewhere else. And in the meantime, they get a little bit younger with a more of a prospect type player with Jacoby Keeney-James being added in that spot. So those are your transactions. Green Bay now still has a active roster spot on the 53, which they could just be holding open for Christian Watson, Marshawn Lloyd, etc. They also now have 1 spot open on the practice squad as well. All right, before we get into our conversation with the Paul Farrington boys, a couple things really quick. Luigi's Pizza. Listen, let's put it this way. You just cooked out, your stomach's growling, and kickoff for the Packers is only an hour away. No need to stress for dinner. Hunt for a restaurant. Let Luigi's Pizza come to your rescue. Since 1968, Luigi's has been crafting mouth-watering pizzas that capture the flavors you've come to love. A classic pepperoni pizza oozing with cheese, pepperoni slices sizzling with flavor, all resting on an ultra-thin, crispy crust that delivers the perfect crunch in every single bite. Or take it up a notch with the deluxe pizza, layers of black olives, green peppers, mushrooms, pepperoni, woven in one delicious slice. You can find Luigi's Original in the freezer aisle of your local grocery store. Luigi's Pizza, taste the tradition. Also, retirewithryan.net. If you haven't gone there yet, it's free. Everyone loves free. You love free. I love free. Retirewithryan.net. Go there right now. Free retirement consultation. Free. I'm going to say it one more time. Free. Check it out over at retirewithryan.net. Ryan is awesome to work with. You're going to love working with him on your retirement future and what steps are going to be best for you individually. This is for Pack-A-Day podcast listeners and viewers only, so take advantage of it. Retirewithryan.net and Alchemy Wealth Management. And now, without any further ado, let's get to our conversation with the Paul Farrington Show.
Welcome into Behind Enemy Lines, a collaboration between the Pack-A-Day podcast and the Paul Farrington Show. Paul Farrington joined by Robert Ziggy Ziegler and Andy Herman to break down a really noteworthy week, I think, of NFC North football. Don't worry, Andy. We're not going to come at you too hard after that. The Packers' fourth quarter collapse versus the Browns, and the Vikings, Lions, and Bears, all with statement wins, I'd say. And you know, you feel differently if you're a fan of each fan base. Because I still feel a little bit weird as a Viking fan, even though you win by 38 points. Quick reminder for everyone listening, please remember to like, comment, subscribe to the Pack-A-Day podcast and to the Paul Farrington Show. We appreciate everyone for engaging. And it seems so far, guys, like everyone's enjoying this collaboration. So through a few weeks, we haven't screwed it up yet. So, Andy, how are you doing after that Browns game?
Yeah, I think you actually covered everything, Paul. I think this is a good show. I think we can kind of wrap it up right here. This is great. We'll catch back up after a Packers win next week. And yeah, I think we kind of cover everything. So nice job. I just want to remind you, I definitely was not gloating at any point over the last couple weeks when the Packers were winning. I don't remember that. I didn't have a huge smile on my face coming off of week 2. I was definitely not rubbing salt in the wounds last week. So I think we got to keep this, going both ways. No, that was, you never want to be the one when the NFC North is 3-1. Like you never want to be that team when it's a 3-1 week overall. Man, if you would have told me ahead of time that the NFC North went 3-1 through the course of the week, never in a million years, with obviously Detroit with Chicago and Minnesota playing the way that they had over the first couple weeks, with Detroit having Baltimore in Baltimore and Green Bay having the lowly Cleveland Browns. Never in a million years would I have got to the Packers being the one in the 3-1 for the week. But to your point, Paul, a very noteworthy week in the NFC North, a not great one for the Green Bay Packers, but I do agree. I think it was statement wins for all 3 of the other teams.
It certainly wasn't. And, I just want to jump right into this, Andy, because we were doing a reaction show and our numbers are so different and our reactions are so different based on a Packer win or a loss, where after a win, everyone's just writing Super Bowl. After a loss, a little more venting, a little more frustration, sometimes even perhaps targeted at the Vikings fans, which kind of makes sense. But one of the big comments we saw, and one of the comments that I've heard from several of my friends who are Packers fans, is that people just don't seem to trust Jordan Love in big situations. Now, this game, I wouldn't pin it all on Jordan, but the interception he had was massive, right? The one thing you can't do in that situation is throw an interception, let alone have it returned to the 5-yard line, sets up the Browns tying the game. He did lead Green Bay back down the field, and they should have won on the field goal. But ultimately, I want to ask you, where does your confidence stand in Jordan Love right now? And do you trust him in late game situations?
Yeah, I really do. It's not wavered in any way, shape, or form. A couple things. Packers fans are coming off of back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks. The expectation is insanely high. Jordan Love threw 11 picks in 2023, I think it was. It was right around there again in 2024. We are not talking about some insanely crazy risk-taking gunslinger quarterback. Yeah, 11 in 23, 11 in 24. He's now at 1 in 2025 so far. He was about to set the record for 10 consecutive regular season games without throwing an interception. He was about to set the Packers record. And I think this gunslinger mentality, or can't come up in the clutch moments, is completely and utterly overblown and completely ridiculous. Is he as risk-averse as the most risk-averse quarterback in the history of the world than Aaron Rodgers? No, he's not. I kind of don't want him to be. In fact, I thought at times Aaron was a little bit too risk-averse. I look at process in this scenario, and one of the things that Mike Clements, the great quarterbacks coach, always talked about is you have to have vision in front of you when you're throwing the ball. In this particular situation, Jordan clearly did not have that vision in front of him of where he was going with the ball, and it led to a catastrophic mistake. I do think there is blame, obviously, to put on Jordan for this one. I don't think there's much question about that. But I look at process in this one. You've been nuked all game by the Browns defensive front. This was very clearly a quick hitter, a one step and out. We're getting the ball out of our hands. And when you get to the line of scrimmage, you're reading man-to-man coverage on this play. And what you're supposed to do post that, once you read man-to-man coverage, is you're getting the ball, you're watching to make sure, is it actually man-to-man? If they change it to zone or something different, all right, we need to abort. We can't just rip that ball. He reads it as man-to-man correctly. It is man-to-man coverage correctly. And he sees Wicks went inside, and it's a one step and out. He does everything that he's supposed to do to check those boxes in front of that. He rips it in there. And while Grant Delpit was in man-to-man coverage on Tucker Kraft, he reads Jordan's eyes, falls off of that man-to-man coverage. It wasn't like he was in a sneaky robber roll or anything like that. He fell off of his correctly diagnosed man-to-man coverage to go and make a really smart interception, understanding that probably in that situation, with the defensive line being as good as they were all game long, that he has the ability to take that risk and go and try to make that play, that he's probably not making a second read on that play. So Delpit goes and picks that off. I don't fault much of the process overall for Jordan on that play. I hate the play call. I don't want him throwing into any sort of muddied picture in that situation. I want a one read where there's one corner, one receiver. If he wins, great. If he doesn't, we're not throwing it. So I don't like the play call in that situation. Is there blame on Jordan for it? Sure. And it's going to be because he's quarterback one. But even in that play, in a catastrophic situation, I can understand the process and what his mind was going through in that one. And I actually take more umbrage with the play call than I do with the actual throw. And then to your point, Paul, he goes down and leads them immediately down the field. Although it was obviously buoyed by a good kick return and a pass interference penalty, he still leads them down. Game-winning field goal should have been done. We're probably talking about that instead if the field goal is just made rather than a catastrophic interception for Jordan Love.
So how about you?
I had an unfortunate instant reaction where I feel like I was too critical of Jordan Love because the one big play is what you remember. But going back, watching the game again, this was not a game where Jordan Love got to do the things he was best at. If you look at what made him so effective for the first 2 weeks of the season, this guy was chucking it downfield, and Jordan Love is very effective at that. This game, his average depth at target under 2 yards. He just did not have the time to let a play develop and get the ball out. So I know it's disappointing, and certainly there's all sorts of things you could point to that could have gone better this game on the play calling. But with an offensive line that's struggling and Jordan Love not being able to do the things that make him a lethal quarterback, that made it very easy for the Browns defense to say, we know you can't throw the ball deep. We're going to go after you every single play, pressure you on almost half your dropbacks, just make you uncomfortable all game. Very few quarterbacks are going to do well in that game script, and we've seen it. Like Lamar Jackson struggled plenty of times against that too. So I'm not going to sit back here like I did when the first game came out and said it has to be on Jordan Love to get better. A lot of things went wrong for the offense this game.
I think what a lot of Packers fans... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
No, go ahead.
I just from talking to other Packers fans, though, and I agree that it's kind of crazy to come out here and be like Jordan Love's the problem. Without Jordan Love, this Packers season would be completely derailed. Yep. But I will say, other Packers fans that I've talked to have said it always feels like, and you know, I brought this up before. He has maybe 1 to 3 plays a game. Jordan has where, you know, he has that off his back foot throw, kind of throws it into dangerous territory. And against Detroit, like that happened in the Detroit game. And fortunately for Green Bay, it was called back because of the penalty. But that was a pick 6 for Brian Branch, right? And the other one, I think Anzalone dropped it, I think it was.
Yep.
But like you do see these moments with Jordan, the 2 playoff games that he's had where you guys have lost, like big turnover in the San Francisco game against Philadelphia, 3 interceptions. I know he went 9 regular season games, but he did have 3 in the playoff game. So I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. I'm a big Jordan Love believer. I think he's going to have a great season. But I'm just saying, like, where I could see where other Packers fans who are probably a little more critical, a little more emotional right after the game, but that's where they're coming from. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do see certain situations where it's like, Jordan, just be a little more careful in the big moment.
And I think this is too where some of the nuance comes in, right? I think some people wanted to make that immediate jump of like, hey, this year he's going to be, you know, maybe even top of that MVP conversation. Well, MVPs have the ability to overcome some of the stuff that Ziggy is talking about earlier, right? Mm-hmm. Like where everything's not perfect, but I don't really care because I'm Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson and I'm just going to make things happen no matter what.
Yeah.
I don't think Jordan has shown that he is quite to that level. Not quite. He's not at that level. I guess 99% of quarterbacks in the history of football are not at that level. They're not to the level of just being like, I don't even need the help around me. I'm just that freaking good that with a, you know, random group of wide receivers, a offensive line that's struggling, whatever, I'm still in a running game that's non-existent. We're still probably just going to go out and win because I'm going to be able to put up 20 points almost on my own. Like Jordan's not at that level, and that's okay. You know, I think in some of those moments, you know, you've got to find a way to, again, maybe just not make that mistake in that moment. But we see like almost every single quarterback throughout the course of any given week throw a ball or two that they would probably like to have back. Yep. That's kind of the normal, you know, just NFL quarterback situation in Green Bay. With Favre, certainly we were used to that, but like now we're talking almost like 20 years ago. And so like with Aaron, Packers fans are not used to that whatsoever. They're just used to the ball leaving the quarterback's hands and you never have to worry about an interception. And if an interception happens, it's like, oh my God, what the hell? What was that? I don't understand. I can't compute. And I just think like, despite the fact that he's got a very low, interception ratio and everything like that. Just when you see it, it's like, what was that? Even the line, like, so I have 3 interceptable passes in 3 games so far for Jordan. The one that you talked about to Anzalone, that's the only one where I'm like, what in the hell was, I still to this day have no idea if that slipped out of his hand, if he tried to do like a no look and didn't realize that Anzalone was there, if he was trying to throw it away and it just kind of slipped. I have no idea. That was a bizarro, what the hell was that throw? The one we just talked about in the slants was, again, I can understand what he's thinking. It's a great play by Grant Delpit. Still got to probably find a way not to throw it, but I can at least understand the process. And then the one with Branch, that is a complete tip your cap to Brian Branch.
Yeah,
even when he threw that, I didn't think there was a chance in hell that was going to be picked, and Brian Branch made a Brian Branch play. So again, I'm not super concerned overall with the process, with the way that he's taking care of the ball. I think in some of those key moments, does it need to be a bit better? In playoff games, does it need to get better? Absolutely. If you protect him and put the pieces around him, I have a ton of faith that he's going to be able to get the job done. In this game, he wasn't protected. He didn't have the pieces that he needed. There was no run game in it. I don't think he's quite to that level yet where he can just automatically win that game on his own.
Yeah, just looking right here to build off your Rodgers point. 2018 to 2021, Rodgers had 2 interceptions, 4, 5, 4 before, he had 12 in his last year with the Packers. And that 2018 season that started with 2, the 7 years before, he did not have double-digit interceptions either. So that, like Aaron, just special quarterback, but very good at protecting the football as well. Just kind of a fun fact for you guys. I was doing a little digging around, and Jordan's 37 career starts post 2023, or when he finally took over as the starting quarterback, when he has a turnover, fumble, or an interception, Green Bay is 6-13. In games where he is turnover free, 14-4. So take, make of that what you will. But when Jordan Love's protecting the football, this Packer team, and I'm sure for most teams, like when you have turnover free games, your record is going to be better, of course. But 14-4, I mean, that's about as good, almost as good as you can be when they protect the ball. The next question I wanted to ask you, Andy, and we obviously know, Ziggy, as Vikings fans, how an offensive line can derail a game or derail a season. And Green Bay is sort of in a spot right now where Jordan Morgan is, he was just ripped apart by your guys' fan base. I actually felt bad for Jordan, who had a tough game. But then you have Zach Tom re-injuring or re-aggravating his oblique injury. Aaron Banks re-aggravating his groin injury. The status of this O-line right now, where they were all healthy in week 1, and you saw what you did to the Lions. Jordan really wasn't touched. How are you feeling? How nerve-wracking is this offensive line moving forward?
It's one of those things where if it doesn't get fixed, it becomes catastrophic. Like if they play that style of offensive line against Philly or Minnesota or whoever it might be in the playoffs, like it's just over. Like you're not going to be able to survive that. Over the course of the last, forever, Green Bay has always been able to cobble together an offensive line that's been at minimum competent. And I still have a feeling like they still have Adam Stenavich, who's one of the great offensive line minds, even though he's the offensive coordinator in the building. They have got a lot of bright minds. I think Luke Butkus is a solid offensive line coach. I think they will get this figured out. And I do just think a part of this was the Browns are really insane up front. Like they're good. Really, really freaking good. And my guess is they don't play a defensive line that's quite as disruptive as them all season long. And I certainly don't think they'll have a game where they play as bad all season long. And I think some of these things too is like you have one of those games where you get your, handed to you. Mm-hmm. And then like to take Detroit in week 1, Green Bay completely obliterated Detroit's offensive line up front, and everyone's freaking out and panicking. And then look at where Detroit was at last night against Baltimore's defensive line. Granted, no Metabuike, and they had some injuries up front, but Detroit's offensive line looked freaking awesome up front. Like some of these things where you get, you get your face punched in 1 week, you have your come to Jesus moment, you get it corrected, and all of a sudden the following week, and Green Bay's in a great spot this week where Dallas does not have the pieces up front to kind of take advantage the way that Cleveland does. I think this probably just kind of takes care of itself over the course of time, but it is a major issue if there's any semblance of this come January and February, hopefully February, but January, February, it's just going to completely derail them at some point. So it has to get better, and it's definitely something that they're going to have to clean up sooner rather than later.
I was very surprised, Andy. Maybe you can talk about this a little bit. I associate Green Bay with having a super conservative medical staff. And seeing Zach Tom come out there play one play, and then they say he didn't re-aggravate it, he didn't re-injure it, he was just totally not ready to play, and we had no idea. Do you know like what happened there? Because that seemed very not Green Bay to me.
Yeah, I don't know if there's been like a change in philosophy, but you can argue that Jordan came back a week too early. If at best last year against Minnesota, you can argue Jair Alexander came back way too early last year and re-aggravated his injury right away. No one thought Christian Watson should have been out there against Chicago in the final game of the season. That really didn't matter for a whole heck of a lot, and he ends up tearing his ACL and MCL in that game. Jaden Reed was playing on a bum foot coming into this season. And then now you've got Zach Tom, Tucker Kraft kind of being what seemed maybe like a little bit rushed back in this game. It's just been a really interesting thought process. And I talked through this on one of my shows yesterday, but I think one of the biggest gray areas in the NFL is the difference between hurt and injured. If you're not playing hurt in the NFL, like you don't have a team, like you literally can't go out there, but like everyone's hurt. So you have to go out there and play hurt when you're hurt. If you're injured, nobody should be out there. If there's risk of major re-injury, nobody should be out there. And I think that line is so thin and that area is so gray. And sometimes players say like, yep, I can go, I can do this. And I think medical staffs are like, all right, well, if you can go, like we need you out there, we're going to have you go. I just think sometimes the team almost has to protect the players from themselves. I don't know what it is. I hope they learn their lesson from this one because I think they've been a bit too aggressive in bringing guys back from injury. I get it if it's like a playoff game and like, hey, it's now or never, sure, whatever. A week 3 game in Cleveland did not feel like it was now or never. And quite frankly, I think they would have been better off had they been prepared to be without Zach Tom rather than him going out there playing one snap and then having to adjust on the fly.
Banks also left, right? During the game.
He did. It was a different injury though for him though. So he did not have a groin injury previously.
Okay.
He'd been dealing with back injuries and some other stuff. And then this was a new groin injury that he left with. So he was actually cleared throughout the week. He practiced in full. He was not on the injury report by the end of the week. So his was a little bit more happenstance. Now he had a different injury that kind of flared up. So
got it. My bad. I thought I saw ankle and groin. So so Banks is hurt. Tom is hurt. Morgan played really bad. It's just that's something to watch, keep an eye on, I think, for Green Bay, especially. I mean, next week you hope that they can, handle Dallas, who has just been horrendous on defense this year. But you look at the Eagles, you look at the Lions, who Aiden Hutchinson sure looked a lot better last night, especially in that fourth quarter. Even the Vikings, who I'm not putting them up there in that tier, but like the Vikings, that front seven that they have, the front four in particular, can get after the quarterback. So the teams that Green Bay couldn't beat last year, obviously they're 1-0 against Detroit right now, but that's just something to watch. A final thing I wanted to ask, actually for you, Ziggy, because as the enemy here in our show, Behind Enemy Lines, I personally am keeping the Packers on the same tier as Detroit and Philly. I am bumping them behind them in my power rankings, and people got a little upset about that, but Detroit goes in and does that to Baltimore, and the Packers lose to Cleveland. I think it's fair to swap them, even though week 1 was what happened in week 1. What about you, Ziggy? Are you keeping them on the same tier? Are they still above the Eagles and Lions? How are you feeling about the Packers as a challenge to the NFC?
I know week 1 and week 2 are 2 of the least informative weeks that you get in the NFL, but I also don't think we should think that the most recent week is the only one that matters. The Packers are the only team among the elite that have gone and beat 2 good teams. I know it was at home. I know Detroit went to Baltimore. But I think the fact that the Lions, it turns out they're a really great team with an effective offense, makes that Packers victory continue to look better. I still think very highly of the Commanders. The Rams were almost going to beat Philly, and then it took a fluke blocked field goal. Green Bay lost on a fluke blocked field goal. And I know like special teams is part of the game. I understand that. But it's not like either of those were particularly convincing wins. Every NFL team is going to lose some games. It happens, right? Like the Miami Dolphins will probably be the last undefeated team in NFL history. I am not going to look at the Packers losing a game for reasons that we could have predicted and seen coming, right? Like the offensive line is hurt. They're facing Myles Garrett. If we knew that was going to happen, I think we'd be talking about this a little differently. I've still got the Packers on top.
Wait. On top meaning like number 1?
Yes.
You son of a... Come on, man.
I don't know what you want from me, Paul. I get that this Browns game was a bad loss. I get it. But the Packers have beaten 2, I think, of the better teams in the NFL. And if it turns out Detroit's really, really good, what else am I supposed to make of the fact that the Packers neutralized their offense?
Andy, are you seconding that, or am I like tell me your...
I'll split the difference a little bit between the two. I think, first of all, this just goes to show, like a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how the Vikings had a better chance to win the NFC from a Vegas standpoint, or the NFC North from a Vegas standpoint, than the Detroit Lions. And I think we all were in agreement of like, that seems sort of ridiculous. And now you can kind of see, it's like, I just think we're such prisoners of the moment. So on that side, I'm a little bit more with Ziggy of like, what happened this week all of a sudden feels like that's the new thing. Like now Detroit's unstoppable again and Green Bay's up. They're just the same old Green Bay Packers. It's like those first 2 weeks for everyone still happened. They're still very important. On the flip side, wherever, Green Bay, Philly, Detroit land, to me, and this is again not to disparage any of the other NFC North teams here for a moment, but I see this as right now, I think there's 6 teams. I think in the West, the 49ers, although the Bosa thing is just catastrophic for them, in my opinion.
They can't stay healthy.
I put that at them at the bottom of this list for sure. But to me, if there's a team that wins the NFC that's not San Francisco, LA, Philly, Green Bay, Detroit, or Tampa, I would be just beyond sort of stunned at this point.
Whoa,
and so that's what I said, not to disparage any other teams in the NFC North, but to me, those are the 6 right now. And we are going to see some version of those 6, I think, ebb and flow through. This is the team this week. And I think Philly's going to stay up there no matter what. I think Green Bay and Philly and Detroit are probably going to have some level of staying power too. Tampa and LA and maybe San Fran get their name in the conversation at some point. But to me, I just think we're going to see this kind of go back and forth between some version of those teams. It's going to probably be those 6 and one other team that make it to the playoffs. And then that's when this thing really starts and we get to see which of these teams actually learn their lessons through the course of the season. Did Green Bay learn not to do the same stupid stuff they did against Cleveland and actually make it so that they can compete in those games? Or do we get another, 22-10 or whatever it was game against the Eagles like we saw last year? Hey friends, it's time to start getting our sleeper picks in for week 4. Vikings, Steelers, our first international game of the year. I think this one's going to be a defensive struggle, so I'm going to be going fewer on a lot of these categories, including Aaron Rodgers, fewer than 202.5 passing yards. I think this Vikings defense is going to be all over Aaron Rodgers, and I think passing the football is going to be extremely difficult in this game. Meanwhile, Jordan Mason, less than 79.5 rushing yards. To me, this Steelers defense is going to make Carson Wentz beat them and make sure that Jordan Mason is not getting the requisite yardage to need to get a win internationally. So I'm going Jordan Mason, fewer than 79.5 rushing yards. And last but not least, Justin Jefferson, more than 5.5 receptions. This is the one that I'm making an exception on for what I believe is going to be a defensive struggle. I think Minnesota is going to feed Justin Jefferson, get him involved early and often, and make him the star of that Sunday morning international game. Just to recap, Aaron Rodgers, fewer than 202.5 passing yards, Jordan Mason, fewer than 79.5 rushing yards, and Justin Jefferson, more than 5.5 receptions. Make sure to get your picks in over on Sleeper. You can get a 100% match up to $100 by using code PACKADAY. Again, a 100% match up to $100 by utilizing code PACKADAY. Make sure to use that code. Check it out over on Sleeper. And make sure that you understand that terms and conditions can apply. So check out those terms and conditions over on Sleeper. It is available in over 25 states. So what are you waiting for? Get after it right now.
Yeah, I think I'd even knock off Tampa and the 49ers from your... I mean, I think those are 2 teams that absolutely could go on a run. But my list would just be the other 4 with the Rams, Packers, Eagles, and Lions at this point in time. And before we move on to the next game, to the Viking game, there's one thing. Did you see, Andy, that Sports Illustrated ranked the top 6 losses of Matt LaFleur's Packer career?
I did not, but I'd be interested to hear some of the, like, I have some off the top of my head I could probably name.
Would you like to try and guess the 6? I'll tell you.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right, let me just clarify really quick. Are they like the most important losses? Like, cause like the playoff losses are like massively important, right? But to me, so, all right.
This seemed very much based on vibe after the game.
Okay. Saints game in Jacksonville opening week is one of the top ones for me, where it's like supposed to be an evenly matched game. It's a neutral site game that's supposed to be a home game for New Orleans, but because of a hurricane that has to take place in Jacksonville, and it's like a 38-3 game, they completely get annihilated out of the stadium.
That's 5. That's number 5, the Jameis Winston. Yep.
The Tommy DeVito loss to the Giants. I bet it's not on
three.
there.
That's number three.
Number three. That's definitely on there. There are two games where, again, I'm not sure they're going to be on there, but there's like a 38-10 or something like that loss to the Buccaneers and Tom Brady in the regular season where they were up 10-0, and then the Buccaneers absolutely demolished them after that. There's another one in his first year as head coach where they go to the Chargers, and then there's one to the 49ers, both in the regular season, and just get absolutely annihilated in those two as well.
Yes, so the Tampa one is not there, but they lumped together the Chargers loss, that 49ers Sunday Night Football loss, and then they added in the NFC Championship game of that year. They just said the California season where Raheem Morris ran for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns.
That's a good list.
So that's
right.
6.
They're not wrong.
So you have 6 with right there. You have 5 with the Saints, and you have 3 with the Giants. You need 4, 2, and 1.
Oh, okay. So all right, I thought some of those were going to be separate ones. Okay, 4, 2, and 1. I'd have to go back and probably look at it a little bit more. There was, I mean
I can tell you now, or it would be great to see you ruminate on these losses a little more.
Yes, like. I know the NFC Championship game lost to the Buccaneers. Again, I don't know if that is like going to be on there.
That did not make the list.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know then. Well, the divisional loss to the 49ers with the punt block has to be on there. All right, that's number 1. That has to absolutely be on there. The game against the Jets following their loss to the Giants in London, or the London one to the Giants, both of them could be on there too.
Neither of those were there, but it is kind of funny seeing number 4 was the Rodgers finale versus Detroit.
Okay. That to me was like they didn't even deserve to be in there in the first place. So the fact that they actually worked their way to that game and came this close, I didn't actually feel like devastated after that. In fact, it felt right that they shouldn't have been in the playoffs last year, but I can understand why they'd put it on the list.
And number 2 was 2 days ago. Was the Browns game.
Sorry. I thought for sure that one would be on there. So
they put the Browns loss as the second worst loss as far as vibes in the LaFleur era, which I was just like, wow. I kind of get it. Like from the reaction I saw of Packers fans, it sort of makes sense. And that 49er game, though, I mean, that was, I'll never forget watching that with a family friend who's like, special teams has plagued us all year. Watch it get us today. And then that happens. But yeah, so safe to say the vibes aren't super high in Green Bay, but I think it's worth mentioning to everyone, just in the words of Aaron Rodgers, relax. It's going to be fun.
I agree.
So, all right, let's
on the flip side.
What are you saying?
Flip side. Oh, sorry. What's it?
I was going to say, great segment idea, Paul. We should do that more often.
Thank you.
I was going to say on the flip side, you guys had a hell of a week in the start of the Carson Wentz era for you guys. I'll get the obvious one out of the way right now. If you could have moving forward, I'm going to give you the option this week. You can have either Carson Wentz or prime Josh Allen. Who are you choosing moving forward for your quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings? No, it's a nice win for you guys.
I actually think you could have said Carson Wentz or JJ McCarthy moving forward, and it's a very interesting question. Like what?
It's a very interesting topic from now on.
What do we do about this? I feel really bad, and I shouldn't. Maybe like people are going to come in the comment section and start saying like, "All right, Paul, can you learn to enjoy a win for crying out loud? You won by 38 points." I mean, we're up 41-3 at one point. Like, how many times do you see a game in the early fourth quarter that's a college football score? That's like, Bama playing, insert random team here. It was a defensive masterclass is my takeaway from it, where we had 9 QB hits, 4 sacks, 3 fumble recoveries, 2 interceptions, 171 yards allowed. Isaiah Rodgers was the first player ever to have a 99.9 PFF grade. He had, for anyone who didn't see, it was truly unbelievable. He had a pick 6, forced fumble, which he then picked up in return for a touchdown, and another forced fumble, all in the first half. I think that's seriously the greatest half of football a defender has ever had. If someone can remember one off the top of their head, please let me know.
Well, only a 99.3 coverage grade, though, so he's got some room for improvement. Only a 99.3 coverage grade.
But it was, the defense was awesome, and you saw the importance of the Vikings getting some dudes back. Harrison Smith tipped that pass that Rodgers picked off. You saw him in one video push Ivan Pace into position to make a tackle. He's just so important to that team. Christian Darrisaw, Ziggy, I know we got in a little fight on the reaction show about Darrisaw's impact on this game alone, but certainly to me better than School and one of the best left tackles in football. And Van Ginkel returns with 2 sacks. So in some sense, with getting all these guys back and seeing the defense play like this, I think that you can give a little more leeway to McCarthy to some degree with the way the offensive line was hampered and the defense just being a lot better tonight, even though they have honestly been playing well. And there are still guys out like Cashman and Addison. That this Vikings team is ready to win right now, is my takeaway. And I'm just so torn up that we have such a big question mark at quarterback, where I'm looking at Darnold and I'm looking at Jones is undefeated, and I think Rodgers can still throw the hell out of the football. And while I supported the decision to go with JJ in the offseason, it feels like a massive, massive mistake right now, where if we had any of those other 3 guys, and I'm probably a little less confident in Jones than the other 2, I might have the Vikings on the tier with the Packers, Eagles, and Lions to go to the Super Bowl. It's crushing me. It's tearing me apart that it's like so close, but there's yet so far with the quarterback situation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree with that, Paul. I'll say a couple of things about how I felt about this game. One was, I've gotten a lot of flack for saying I didn't feel like Carson Wentz played an incredible game. People are pointing to his passer rating, saying he had one of the highest passer ratings of the week. This looked to me a lot like vintage Carson Wentz, where he holds the ball for 5 seconds and comes very close to taking sacks. It's just that this game, the defense was able to put up a bunch of points. That's no disrespect to Carson Wentz, and he certainly played a solid game of football. It was better than we've seen from J.J. McCarthy. But this game didn't make me step back and say, we need Carson Wentz starting the whole season, keep J.J. McCarthy on the bench. There's no point playing him. I still believe that J.J. McCarthy can play good football this season. And that's why I think once he's healthy, he should be back in. Maybe I'm crazy, right? Maybe this is just me trying to cope in a very different way than you, Paul, with the fact that we could have had Darnold or Daniel Jones or Aaron Rodgers playing. But I still believe in J.J. McCarthy, the player. Like you said, I think the offensive line was much better this game. The defense was much better this game. It's a lot easier to look good as a quarterback when you're playing the Bengals. I know the Falcons, I did not enjoy the fact that they got absolutely steamrolled by the Panthers. That did not make me feel very good about that loss. But at the end of the day, we won a game. That's nice. This does not make me feel like we need Carson Wentz starting the rest of the season, like I'm seeing other Vikings fans say. And I know that's not exactly what you said, but
no, I don't want to make it sound. I don't want to make it sound like I've given up on JJ. That's not how I feel. I think we've all been really rational with our responses to games this year, but in particular with JJ, it's like it's 2 weeks, guys. Got to give him a little bit more time. It's the problem that I'm having is I really do think, particularly with Darnold, if you inserted him onto this team again, they would just pick up where they left off. And maybe down the road, it gets them in a big spot and Darnold has a poor performance. But that's what I mean when I say, like, I'm regretting it. But now I'm questioning, like, Ziggy, you think if we go 2-0 the next 2 weeks against the Steelers and Browns, we have a bye, and then we come back with Philly at home, it's very reasonable to think the Vikings could be 4-1. And I know we get into these hypothetical games, but you just can't. Like, look at Packers-Browns this weekend. But if we are 4-1, don't you have to let Wentz keep going?
I mean, there's a locker room management question, right? You always wonder, like, how are guys going to feel if we take Carson Wentz out, who's been undefeated, and replace him with J.J. McCarthy? I don't know what the Vikings locker room is like. I cannot speak to that, but setting that aside, I just don't see how not giving J.J. McCarthy game reps is going to make the team better, not just long-term, but this year. Like, I don't think Carson Wentz is going to be the guy that leads us to a playoff run. I'm not even convinced if we're undefeated or leaving the easiest stretch of games for the season that he's going to take us to the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
Like, the only way the Vikings, I think, are a really good team this year is if J.J. McCarthy is a solid quarterback this year. I just don't see any other way.
How do you feel, Andy, as the
enemy? So you just going back to the conversation for just a couple seconds ago from like the Super Bowl version, or like kind of what Paul was saying. Let's take the premise that the Vikings have a Super Bowl caliber defense, which is not a tough premise to get through, right? Let's say that they have a Super Bowl caliber offensive line, weapon group, obviously Jefferson, Addison, etc. If you get into the playoffs and you've got everything else set up to win a Super Bowl, and you've got J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, like, to me, that's just the limiting factor. That's where it feels like, to me, you're probably in no man's land, where it might be fun, compete if you have everything go right. but I would just have a hard time believing that from what we've seen so far, that is going to get you to and or through a Super Bowl. So I'm just kind of going back to the point from earlier with Paul of saying, like, I can understand both of your points of view in that, like, I don't think Carson Wentz is the answer to that. I don't feel any differently of like, oh yeah, now Carson Wentz is going to be able to be the person who gets you through it. But I do see and understand the regret of what if, of like, hey, there were quarterbacks that were available out there that maybe could have done that. If everything else is, and again, we have to, like, just with that premise, if everything else is a Super Bowl worthy component, but the quarterback, and you're going with a first time starter, does there not almost have to be some level of regret of like, or what if in that scenario?
So certainly that's not my dominant reaction, but I definitely feel that. What this makes me wonder, though, we talked about this a little bit last week, is it just makes me wonder what the Vikings organization was thinking going into this offseason. I got a lot of, and Paul and I talked about this a good bit, we got a lot of confidence from the fact that, well, if Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi are sitting back thinking JJ McCarthy's ready to lead this team, he's ready to lead this team, it doesn't look like he's there. And it doesn't look like you said, Andy, Carson Wentz, I don't think is that guy either, which is why I'm not clamoring for Wentz to be the starter. But they should have known, or maybe they did know, that like JJ McCarthy wasn't ready. They had guys in the building. I mean, Daniel Jones left not because he didn't want to stay with Minnesota because he hated it there, because he didn't like the weather. It's not better in Indianapolis. He left because he wanted an opportunity to start. If we said, hey, we don't think JJ McCarthy's ready, if you come out and play well as you played against, say, Anthony Richardson, we'll give you the starting job until you screw up too much, I think he probably would have stayed. Sam Darnold's trickier. But again, that's a deal where the Seahawks could jettison next year and starting Jalen Milroe if they feel good about that. So I would love to have been in the rooms where these decisions were made for the Vikings this year, because I'm just not sure what their thought process was, because given what we've seen from JJ McCarthy, this feels like a really obvious outcome.
Well, I think the thought process, Ziggy, was that JJ could do it. So maybe they just were wrong. And again, though, we have to remember 2 weeks. Like, there's still a lot of room to grow. An important factor as well in the decision that we're talking about, if they're 4-1, right, coming into the Philly game, if Carson Wentz is playing like Sam Darnold played to start last season, and he's just unbelievable, then you need to play him. Yeah, you have to keep playing him. But if you get Carson Wentz where, the Vikings win the game primarily because of the defense and Wentz is just getting the job done, then I'm on the McCarthy train. So I think, like, it's easy to, maybe it's a bad question from me to say, if we're 4-1, what does it look like? What do we do, without actually being able to see what it looks like? But I really do think, I know, Andy, you were talking about the Vikings, if they make the playoffs with McCarthy, probably, they're probably not going on a run. I think the only world where they truly do go on a run, though, is if JJ, if he just finds that magic and then he can elevate his play. Because Carson Wentz, I'd love for him to come out and find, that fountain of youth for the 2017 season, but that's probably not going to happen. So we can sit here and talk about the regret of, as I've done. I mean, I guess I'm just talking to myself right here, but I can sit here and talk about Darnold and Jones and Rodgers. But we're in this spot where we put faith in McCarthy, and we have to know who he is for the short term and for the long term of the organization.
Russell Wilson might be available now, guys. He's backing up in New York. He might be able to make that phone call. Just one phone call away, you could solve all your problems. It's
just so. I think this is the best roster we've had outside of quarterback since the 2009 season.
Do you think Do you think the GM and coach were aligned in their decision to go with McCarthy, or was this a GM, we picked him in the first round, we're giving him the keys to the convertible sort of thing, and maybe the coach wasn't entirely enthralled with the idea, but it's like, well, I'm going to have to go along with it, so we're going to make this thing work, and I'm going to be very positive about it?
I think with the Vikings,
I have a very hard time believing that Kevin O'Connell does not call the shots on quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah. I agree. I think Kwesi, maybe Kwesi felt a certain way, but my guess is that those two operate very well together. It's a very good culture, very tight relationship. I would be shocked if it wasn't Kwesi saying, "This is your call, Kevin, and I support you no matter what." And we'll see how ultimately it winds up taking shape, but it's going to be a really interesting next few weeks as Vikings fans.
The crazy thing about this all is, like, I totally understood the Darnold decision when I saw like the initial, because what was it announced as like a 3-year, $100 million contract for Sam Darnold or something?
Yeah, like 105, I think.
I'm like, I get that. And Darnold deserved to get his payday and whatever. Like that makes total sense. And then when I saw that it could literally be a 1-year, $39 million deal for Darnold, if they release him after next year, it'll pay him $39 million in total. And it would be for just 1 year. And especially with McCarthy being as young as he is, still having 3 years in team control after this and coming off of the injury, that when I saw that, I'm like, I am really, really stunned that they would not have been willing to do basically this exact same carbon copy deal that Seattle was. And maybe they did. And maybe he said, no, I'd rather take Seattle's version of that than this one. I don't know. But, and maybe you guys know better, but I'm surprised in hindsight that for Darnold, after playing as well as he did for the majority of last year and seemingly kind of being a really good fit within that offense, that they didn't just say like, what's the harm in doing 1 year? And I get 39 million is a lot when you're trying to build out a team I get it. But like, to me, that would have been the cost of doing business in that scenario.
It almost seems like they've been hell-bent on finding that rookie quarterback really since Kirk tore his Achilles, because they did, even Kirk was playing some of the best football of his career. We let him go. We didn't let him go for JJ, but the pick wound up being JJ. It's just the decision making seems to have been, and I don't blame them, because that's what wins a lot of times. You have to nail your draft pick, and if you nail the quarterback and build around him, a lot of times those are the teams that we're seeing going on runs right now. I can't say that I'm too upset, because at the time I thought, you know what? If Kevin and Kwesi believe in this in JJ, I'm going to follow them, because they've been right about more than they've been wrong. But we'll have to see. It's again 3 weeks into the year, but I think the Vikings are still that team that you have to kind of circle and be like they're the big unknown in the NFC to me. Like, and I'd lean more towards them being probably a fringe wild card team more than anything else. But there is a world, given the roster, that I think they can bust out of the pack and enter that contender tier more so than maybe anyone other than, like, I don't know. Is Chicago in there? I guess this is a good way to go over to the Bears game. Like, the Bears have the huge 31-14 win to get back on track. And I was really impressed with Caleb in this game. I was really impressed with his bounce back. I thought it was necessary more than anyone in the league for the Bears to get a win this week. And I said on the reaction show to it, the play that stood out to me, other than him throwing it 62 yards downfield, where you're like, holy crap, like that's why this dude's the number one pick in the draft. When Ben Johnson elected at the end of the third quarter to go for it, maybe early fourth, to go for it on 4th and goal from, I think, the 4-yard line. It's a 10-point game. You can make it a 13-point game, but he's saying, screw it. Let's make this 3 possessions, end this thing here. Caleb fires that strike to DJ Moore. That was a moment where you almost could hear it in the crowd too, like, all right, like, let's go. This is what it was supposed to be like. We could be something here. Like, we trust Caleb. Ben trusts them. I thought that this was a good turning point for Chicago, where now as we're looking ahead at their schedule, which we did a week ago, and we were like, loss. All of a sudden, if Caleb plays like this, you could go, all right, maybe they win at the Raiders, or maybe they win at the Bengals now without Burrow. And not to talk them up as a real contender, but I just thought that was a monster win for them to save their season from being completely off the rails.
You didn't get to them in Minnesota and beating Minnesota in Minnesota the week after that?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I didn't get to that game intentionally.
I'm just totally kidding. No, I thought this was better from Chicago. I'm willing to hold back a little bit, because I saw what Russell Wilson did against that Cowboys defense the week before, right? So yeah. I'm willing to pump the brakes a little bit and say, because Dallas isn't getting pressure on anybody. And if you don't get pressure on Caleb and he's willing to stand in the pocket and you give him time, well, then that's like peak Caleb Williams. That's exactly when he's going to hurt you the most. I did think he was better on time and in rhythm in this game as well. So I'm not saying it was just that, but I think Dallas is probably one of the best defensive matchups that he's going to face all year long, just because they can't get pressure on him. So I'm willing to withhold judgment a little bit, but it was clearly better for Chicago, a complete butt kicking of Dallas. And I think certainly something to build off of, if nothing else.
Mm. Yeah, if the Bears start 0-3, the vibes are terrible. The players are feeling terrible. The fans and the media are saying nothing's changed. The season's basically over.
Done. Yeah.
You had to win this game. And if you were going to win this game, Caleb Williams might as well look good. right? If it's like a gritty defensive battle against the team that Russell Wilson just put up 37 points against, like you're not feeling very happy about that. The Bears need this, and they've got another winnable game going to Vegas this week. If they put together 2 performances here, I'm not saying that means they're going to the playoffs or that everything's going to be great this season, but the Chicago Bears are not a team. Previously, we've been able to say they beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and they can look good. They can play extended stretches of football where you say, I like how our quarterback looks. We saw very little of that last season, even in the games they won, even with their hot start. So this is a big win, I think, for just fixing the culture and helping Ben Johnson get a foothold in this room.
Yeah, they were jacked up in that locker room too, and I thought another positive takeaway for them. I'm trying to be a little optimistic for the Bears fans right now who have had just miserable past, however many seasons it is.
Forever.
Yeah, forever, basically. But I did think it was also encouraging. They worked in DJ Moore. They worked in Roma Dunze is starting to play really well. DeAndre Swift, Ziggy, as you say, the engine of the Bears offense has kind of become a running joke / truth of our show. They've been, and Luther Burden had the deep touchdown catch.
Yep.
Everyone got involved, and this was the first time to me where it was like, yeah, okay, this is how everything was supposed to look with Ben. The trick plays, it was fun. If you were a Bears fan, you were actually having fun watching them play football, and that's what you want. That's what you're hoping for. So yeah, now go these next 3 weeks, Raiders, Commanders, and Saints. Yeah, go win those games. I know at Washington's the place where your whole season fell apart last year. Go get a couple big wins and see if you could get this thing turned around.
Got some breaking Minnesota Vikings news. The Vikings have signed Corey Kiner to the practice squad.
Dude.
And Jordan Addison is now on the 53-man roster. Poor Tim Jones has been released. Lucky Jackson and Xavion Valladay have been released from the practice squad. Some big moves in Minnesota happening.
I like Lucky Jackson. That's actually that is a little upsetting. Whenever someone says we have breaking Minnesota Viking news, I get really nervous. I was like, oh no, this is going to be bad. Like someone tore an ACL.
This is why this is applause-worthy. The applause-worthy thing is the Minnesota Vikings 2025 season is not over yet.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
I mean, we're flirting with it, but you just never know with this team. The last NFC North team was the last game of the week, Monday Night Football. And I have to say, since I'm not really a believer right now in the Vikings' long-term ability, and maybe I should be, maybe I'm just way too pessimistic, but since I'm not as locked in with the thought of them winning the Super Bowl as I was last year, I think I was enjoying last night's game more than I would have if I were in your shoes, Andy, where I would, like last year, if that game happened, I'd be going crazy. Like, oh my God, are you kidding? They won in Baltimore. But for me, I was like, wow, this is just an unbelievable game. And the Lions are fun to watch. And having the fourth downs, Dan Campbell's a lunatic. Like straight up, he's a lunatic. But when it works like it did last night, and you have 2 of your drives, fourth down conversions, that awesome fourth down play in the fourth quarter with the pitch from Amon-Ra to Gibbs. They get the big stop on fourth down on the goal line in the first half. And then the craziest one, going for it from your 50-yard line on a 4th and 2 and letting Goff just step back and picture perfect rip it into Amon-Ra to clinch the game. I was so impressed with Detroit's dominance in the fourth quarter that I came on, Andy, onto our reaction show, and maybe I was too emotional, but I think I still feel the same way. I moved them all the way up to number 1. I said they are the team to beat in the NFL right now. Is that too much of an overreaction?
Again, I think they're in that conversation with any of the top teams in the NFL to be a part of that. So if you want to, I get Baltimore is their 1 and 2. They lost that game last night, but Baltimore, Buffalo, Detroit, Philly, I still put Green Bay in that conversation. But like if any of those teams you want to argue is like the top team in the NFL, by all means. And I think Detroit is certainly worthy of that. Obviously love the fact that Green Bay still beat them in week 1, kind of as he was alluding to earlier. But what I will say about Dan Campbell, it's one thing to be a lunatic. There are very few educated lunatics like that are just like, there's not many smart lunatics. And he straddles that line so incredibly well of like, yeah, he's taking crazy chances, but he's taking a crazy chance and getting them into such a high percentage play. And like, that's what's really, and I know a lot of that was like giving credit to Ben Johnson in the past as well, which I'm sure there's a piece of that's true. But like every single one of their calculated, crazy gambles that looks like on paper of like, can you believe that they would do something like this? Then you look at like the percentage of the play of like, again, even that play last night. First of all, there's a penalty on the Amon-Ra St. Brown play anyway, but like Amon-Ra St. Brown is like 2 steps on Marlon Humphrey. If one of the most accurate quarterbacks when protected in the NFL and Jared Goff gets a lofted up 2-step ahead of him throw to Amon-Ra St. Brown to seal the game. If you would have told any coach or coordinator ahead of the game, you can have that play to basically seal the game away. Do you want an easy pitch, just easy toss from Goff to Amon-Ra for the game? Would you take that? Would you sign up for that? They would say, yeah. But if you twist it into like, hey, you got a 4th and 2 on your own 50-yard line to seal the game, do you want that situation? I'd be like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want that. But they consistently find ways to spin the narrative basically in their advantage. We're like, yeah, we're taking this crazy scenario and actually just taking it into a high percentage play for ourselves. And there's nobody that does it like Detroit Lions right now when it comes to that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Ziggy, what do you think?
That's especially true when you consider the alternative isn't just the alternative is now you have to stop Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, who now get their own chance to win the game. And is Derrick Henry going to fumble again? I don't think so.
You might get lucky.
Poor Derrick Henry. I felt so bad for him coming to the sideline where he like threw his helmet, kind of fell, looked like he was actually just about to start crying on the bench. I was like, especially for someone rooting for the Ravens, I was like, damn it, Derrick, come on. I'm just so impressed with them. And I thought I was actually most impressed. Forget about the play calling and the 4th downs from the offense. I thought the defense in the 4th quarter, the pressure and the containment that they had on Lamar, it took over the game. Like the Ravens got down, I think, to the 35-yard line when it was a 7-point game, and then the next like 6 plays or 7 plays offensively for them were basically sacks or pseudo sacks or the Derrick Henry fumble. And Aiden Hutchinson had the punch out. He had another sack. He was just they were terrorizing Lamar. And how many times do you see teams do that to Lamar Jackson? The answer is basically never. I think he was 24-4 against NFC teams coming into that game as well. So it's actually something that you could take positively here, Andy, is that the Packers kept them pretty clean. Or Jordan Love pretty clean against that same Lions pass rush that was on fire, 7 sacks by the end of the game. But just an amazing performance from them to get the win on Monday Night Football and jump in my power rankings. All right, you guys ready to do the predictions for the NFC North teams, and we'll get out of here?
Let's do it.
All right, so we'll start off with the early morning game, the Vikings and Steelers in Dublin, where the Vikings dominate internationally. Now, we've gotten in some arguments on our shows, Andy, whether or not that should just mean the Vikings dominate in London or if they dominate completely anywhere internationally. That's the fight we've been having with our Steelers co-host, Jack.
Okay.
I am personally going to go with the Vikings in this game. Surprise, surprise. But I think it's going to be the Vikings defense gets after Rodgers, wins the day, and Wentz does just enough to help us escape.
Ziggy?
I do not trust the Steelers defense at all. It's been up and down, but it's been much more down than up. Carson Wentz continues the streak. We get a win. Add another country to our belt.
Vikings win. Lead pipe lock of the week. Actually, that's not true. The Bills are the lead pipe lock of the week against the New Orleans Saints. But outside of that one, I like Minnesota in this one. Aaron Rodgers has not been able to do anything outside of throwing like under 2 seconds. If he has to hold the ball or gets under any pressure at all, his like throw under pressure percentage has been brutal. And I think Brian Flores will be well prepared and will not allow those easy completions, and they're going to get after him. And I don't think Rodgers has an answer for it. I think Vikings win on defense in this one.
Yeah, they barely beat New England with 5 New England turnovers in that game too. So I'm with you guys. All right, so we squad right there. Then we have the Browns going to Detroit. The Browns riding a win streak here, going to Detroit, where the Lions seem to have found their rhythm. I don't think the Browns recapture the magic. I think Detroit steamrolls this one and comfortably moves to 3-1.
You're telling me the Browns beat the best team in the NFC North? No chance. Give me Detroit.
Yeah, I'll take the Lions as well. Also lock in that one and feel very confident about that one.
Yes, the Bears then travel to Vegas. They look to move their winning streak to 2 games. The Raiders have been pretty bad this season. I thought after their opening win in New England, I believe it was in New England, right, that they might be able to be something this season, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Ashton Genty hasn't lived up to the hype so far. I think the Bears are going to go in there and get a win. I actually think they're going to continue the momentum, and Caleb's going to play well for a second straight game, and Chicago fans are going to start being lured into the trap.
Yeah, Max Crosby is a great player. I don't think there's anyone else on this Raiders team that can get pressure on Caleb Williams. I'm taking the Bears too.
I'm going to take the Raiders just to be different. I'll take the Raiders at home. I think the Raiders bounce back a little bit in this one, get their offense going, get Genty going, and find a way to pull out a bowling shoe ugly win. I'll say 2017 Raiders.
And then Sunday Night Football, the Packers go to Dallas, the Micah Parsons revenge game. Jerry Jones says, little extra motivation to win this week, even though he has nothing but respect for Micah. He goes, obviously, we want to win. This should make for an exciting time. I think Dallas is a perfect get-right team. You saw it against the Bears. Andy, you were mentioning their defense has just been torn apart this season so far. Forget about Micah screaming off the edge and tormenting Dak, who is without CeeDee Lamb now. This Packer offense, which couldn't find a rhythm last week, what a great spot to get right. I've got Green Bay with an impressive win.
I would have Green Bay. Kenny Clark and Trayvon Diggs are injured. Even if they come back, they're not going to be 100%. The defense will be even worse. I'm taking the Packers to win, but if Kenny Clark plays, maybe gets a revenge sack.
42-14 Packers. Packers
Wow.
get right on offense in a major way. Blowout Dallas Sunday Night Football, 42-14.
Final question, Andy. Would you be more upset with a loss at Dallas this week than you were with the Browns' loss last weekend?
Yes, only because it would be the second one in a row. In general, the loss to Cleveland would be worse. So like if I had to choose either one, I would choose Cleveland as being the far worse loss. But if you now followed it up, that loss with a loss to Dallas, now, yes, I'm actually way more upset.
Yeah, and I think things start to change. The perception of the Packers starts to change drastically. Like this is a big game for them as far as their let's remain our contender status.
Eagles were 2-2 last year. It's going to be that will be my corporate response if the Packers lose to the Cowboys. Eagles were 2-2 last year and had a week 5 bye. They're just following the Eagles blueprint from a season ago. It's all going to be fine.
Corporate Andy will come out next week.
Corporate Andy is Corporate Andy will be here next week if that ends up being the case.
All right. Well, we can wrap it up here, Ziggy, as we always do. Why don't we wrap it up with our skull? And then Andy, go ahead. You could join us if you want.
No skull. I'll give a week Go Pack Go this week after a weak performance in week 3. We need a better performance in week 4 for a better Go Pack Go in week 4.
Okay. We'll see you guys next week on Behind Enemy Lines.